So we took a survey a couple months ago about our demographics, who makes up one church, kind of a little bit about who we are, what everybody believes, which is hard to navigate. There are so many different types of people. We found through the survey that about 50%, it's almost dead even. About 50% of the church is heterosexual identifying, and 50% is LGBTQ identifying. Anyone know what this weekend is at all? Pride. Does anyone know what that is? If you don't know what that is, that's a celebration for the LGBTQ community. So if you notice, about 50% of the people are missing tonight. That's where they're at. They're celebrating their authenticity, which means the rest of us get to celebrate our authenticity together. So don't be afraid to huddle in close. I have a message written, but we might get a little unscripted and weird, because why not? Everybody okay with that? Okay. This is different. That's kind of my middle name, Ronnie. Different. If you haven't picked that up already. That's what you like. Oh, man, it speaks to me. Last week we had our first Sabbath Saturday, and I talked to a lot of different people. It sounds like you all did hiking and hang out with some friends, maybe planned some activities. Some of you did absolutely nothing and told me how amazing that was, because you did nothing. And I did a lot of things, but in the end, I ended up doing a lot of nothing, which was really fantastic. And you forget how amazing the gift of nothingness can be, especially when life gets really, really busy. So we tried that for the first time just to see, how it feels to have a season of rest for a week. And there's an ancient poet, ancient Roman poet. His name is Ovid. And he writes these beautiful words. He says, "Take rest. A field that has rested gives bountiful crops." And I kept thinking of that during this season of just doing nothing. A season of peace, quiet, and rest. And Ovid, I think, speaks this ancient truth that most of us are aware of. Most of us have heard of the Sabbath. Most of us have heard of time off, or hopefully have heard of time off. If not, you need some. And we've kind of engaged in that season of rest. And he speaks to something that is so true, that we see it in patterns in sacred texts everywhere, and we see it in patterns in nature. Nature does rest really, really, really well, better than we do. And so that's sort of this rhythm that we want to create in our community, but in our own lives, is this rhythm of rest and then engagement, and then rest and then engagement. Without that rest, engagement is almost impossible. And I've noticed that in my life, that when I don't rest, the engagement is subpar, right? You're kind of bringing forth here's what I've got. I'm burnt out. Anyone with me on that one? Yes. You kind of just bring whatever you have, but it's kind of, it hits your leftovers. Exactly. It's your leftovers, right? And so I'm hoping that we can create a sense of not leftovers, but bountiful crops. And we can rest together even, I think. But the point is to be in a space of just being rather than doing. And as Americans, it's hard to remember to just be. So Matt briefly mentioned that we've been in this series for Lent called Listening for Lent. We've been doing all kinds of listening. And the very, very beginning of the series, I gave a brief introduction on this idea of Lent. We're often tuned into things that maybe we should fast from or abstain from, or different practices to incorporate in our life. And for us, we kept feeling that maybe as a community, this would be a good time to listen in on maybe where we're going as a community, but to also listen in on our own lives, to pay attention. And so rather than saying, hey, I'm going to give up my Starbucks flat white, or hey, I'm going to give up chocolate for Lent, we said, what if we did the opposite and we actually did something, and that something was deep listening? And we took on that practice to further understand each other and to understand ourselves and God. And so I want to do a quick recap, because I know the thing with being a progressive community is We don't beat you over the head if you don't make your attendance every week. And how many of you are glad for that? Yes, you get to just be and enjoy life. And we actually want you to just enjoy your life. But part of that is you'll see a lot of sporadic attendance sometimes. And so some of you I know have been out of town for weeks, may have missed most of this series. You can go back and listen to it on our Facebook page, or our, I say Facebook every time, on our website or YouTube. But for the sake of time, I want to do a quick recap to connect the dots to where we're at tonight. All cool with that? Okay. Thank you. I love this. I would love if you just talk all the time. It's so much fun. It's really fun. So the first week we ended up doing... we didn't do that. I don't know what that was, but we didn't do that. This happened. That same thing happened to me a couple of years ago, right in the middle of like a really heartfelt moment. And I was like, God, is that you? It was this really strange moment. So let me recap. If you've missed the first few weeks, this is going to happen. I have a feeling this is going to be this kind of night. It's already been this kind of night all night. And so I thought, you get this is a part of listening. You start to pay attention and you go, why am I fighting this? Something is trying to tell me something. So we're going to go for it. The first week, we briefly covered the ancient Jewish prayer, the Shema. And we talked about how listening and doing are really two sides of the same coin with this prayer, that it's, again, this rest and engage. It's participation, but it does require this quiet listening. We hinged around this single idea that how would our lives be different? How would our lives change? And what would it look like if we approached listening every experience with listening as the first intention? So what would our lives look like if that's how our approach was rather than talk and give instant feedback or instant arguments or instant fights, I'm going to pause for a minute and listen. So that was sort of the first week. The second week, we discussed listening as an act of healing. How many of you are there for that one? Steve spoke for a little bit. Got a few hands raised. Steve walked us through this story of the bleeding woman that we read in the Synoptic Gospels, this story of this woman who approaches Jesus and this beautiful moment of healing that happens. And we took it kind of an abstract sense in taking this idea that in this moment, being present and aware, that Jesus had to be present, aware, and tune and feel and know that something was being taken out of him. Something was there was an exchange happening. So we talked about this idea and hinged all on this idea of healing, as listening as being a healing presence, which is a gift. When you're actually truly present with someone and you listen to them, it is such a deep and powerful healing presence. So we focused on that. We broke out into discussions, which was fun. And it's a little hard to hear in that building, but there's some incredible conversations that came out of that. I got a chance to kind of walk around and hear everybody talk. We focused on two questions, which are, who are the voices that aren't heard in today's society? And then this one was a little bit more personal and harder to answer. Who are the voices in your own life that you aren't listening to very well? That one's a lot harder to answer because it requires us getting a little more vulnerable and admitting, I'm probably not paying that much attention to this person. Then lastly, the third week, we explored listening as what I would call a sacred act, or some have called it sacred activism. So it's this idea that we focused on the words from James, the brother of Jesus, who says these words in chapter 1, verse 19. He says, lead up with your ears. Sorry, I'm having difficulties with these. I'm just going to fix it real quick. Lead up with your ears, follow up with your tongue, and let your anger straggle along. And we talked about this idea that we lead first with listening. That's our very first step. We lead first with listening. Then, once we've listened, absorbed, then we go ahead and engage with the tongue or conversation. And I guess if you have to, you can bring anger along. And it's here, but it's not in the driver's seat, right? So we talked about that. There's three touchstones I mentioned in that I really quickly want to mention once again, because if you missed it, They're really powerful tools. It's 3 touchstones for non-judgmental listening, and they're developed by author and activist Parker Palmer. So I'm going to throw these out there real quick if you missed it the first time. The first one is to embrace wonder. So when you're engaged in a conversation with someone, you make listening about them. You make it all about them. We can get real quick into thinking of rebuttals and things we want to say. We pause that for a moment. We try to quiet that mind and we make it about them. And we start to ask questions like, I wonder why they feel this way. I wonder what brought them to think this way. I wonder what life's experiences they had that made them form this thought. So you start to engage this wonder and curiosity of this person's story. The second one is embrace your inner teacher. This one right here, we're going to focus on all night tonight. I wonder what my reaction teaches me about myself. We're not going to focus on that question, but we're going to focus on the inner teacher. So just in case you're wondering where we're going, tonight is about letting your life speak. And so it's about listening to your own inner teacher. Then the last one is ask open-ended questions. I love open-ended questions. It's really a fun way to get some dialogue, some feedback, rather than a yes or no question, which shuts things down. This keeps conversation flowing. So could you tell me more about that? Or what does that mean or what does that mean to you? Or can you explain that? So this week, as I mentioned, we're going to switch things, and instead of looking outward as we've been through this whole series about listening to others, we're going to switch things and start focusing on ourselves and what it means to go inward and listen inward. Which some of you, this might come really naturally to. How many of you think you're really good at listening to your own needs? I'm surprised. That was like 4 people, 3 people. I'm surprised. I actually expected a good chunk of people to go, me. So then some of you are either not being honest and you're like, I don't really care to raise my hand, or we're all probably not that great at listening to our own needs. How many of you would be really vulnerable and you're like, yeah, it's hard for me to decide sometimes my own needs and what I'm hearing? Yes, it's difficult. And so this is harder, I think, to flip the script and pause and think about what you're hearing and what your own life is saying and what's going on inside. So as I mentioned in those touchstones, a lot of this has been based on some reading that I've done and studying I've done through Parker Palmer's work. And he really, really focuses on being present and doing deep listening. And it's really beautiful work. So Parker Palmer's book, Let Your Life Speak, is fantastic. Has anyone read this book by any chance? Got a couple of you? It's really great. If you're a person that's like, I don't know what I should do with my life, this might be a really good resource for you. So the subtitle of his book, Let Your Life Speak, is Listening for the Voice of Vocation. And the thing I like is in this book, he talks about how your life is actually often telling you something. There's often a pattern. There's often a thing that's emerging, but we are too busy trying to force something to happen. We're too busy with our own agenda. And he's kind of saying, hey, if you pause and reflect, you'll actually notice that your vocation or things about you have been kind of telling you things all along, if you pause. So he says in his book, a really incredible story. He says, sometimes I lead retreats, and from time to time, participants show me the notes they're taking as the retreat unfolds. Anybody note takers at retreats? Okay, me too. So this is for all of us. So they show me their notes. The pattern is nearly universal. People take copious notes on what the retreat leader says, and then sometimes they take notes on the words of certain wise people in the group. But rarely, if ever, do they take notes on what they themselves say. We listen for the guidance everywhere else except within. Wow. Yes. Anybody with me on that one? You watch a TED Talk, you listen to a sermon, a podcast, a story, you're taking notes, and you're absorbing this wisdom, all the while forgetting you too possess this same wisdom within. And so we listen for this all over. We listen for guidance everywhere else except within. Anyone relate to that at all? that you feel like you listen to guidance everywhere else but within. Now, if you were raised in, let's say, a conservative Christian background, sadly, you were probably taught not to listen to yourself for guidance because the flesh is weak and bad. Anybody? Yes. You're taught, no, you actually shouldn't. You shouldn't listen to yourself because you can't trust yourself. And so we've been told some of these things before that maybe we're being deceived. And so I want to kind of dive into a richer teaching about how it's actually very deeply traditionally biblical, but also of any faith, very ancient wisdom to listen within. Very, very much so. So, something I find fascinating is that Parker Palmer urges the note takers to flip things around, which is an interesting concept, to take notes on what they're thinking and what they're feeling during these retreats, during these sermons, during these discussions, because he firmly believes that the words we speak, and he says this again later in his book, he firmly believes that the words we speak often contain the counsel we are trying to give ourselves. So in other words, we're our own counsel. We have our own wisdom. And isn't that interesting that we have the counsel right within ourselves? Is anyone thinking, wait, I've heard this before? Or maybe some of you are like, this sounds like heresy. You know this is ancient wisdom, right? Like, this is ancient wisdom. Parker isn't saying something new. Not at all, actually. This is something that's existed for a really, really, really long time. And we've often tried to name this inner guidance, this inner teacher. And maybe some of you are a little uncomfortable with inner teacher, inner wisdom, inner guidance. But, we've been trying to name this for a long time. And in Christianity, we've called it the Holy Spirit. In Judaism, it might be named sometimes divine inspiration. Proverbs, I love this, often refers to it as Lady Wisdom, which is a beautiful story, by the way. If you haven't heard this description of wisdom and how she's like a wise woman, it's really, really beautiful in Proverbs. Call it intuition if you want, or that gut feeling. Anyone get a gut feeling? And you just know, you just have this feeling. You just, like, I don't have facts, but I have a feeling. And that doesn't present well. Like, I don't really actually have a case, but man, my gut tells me. And I've had this feeling more times than I can count, actually, since I was a kid. I've always been a gut feeling person, always. I have a few people shaking their heads, so you must know what I'm talking about. And I think it's important to note because this isn't in my notes, but sometimes being in a progressive community, we can overdo the logic and the facts. And those are very, very important. Don't get me wrong, very, very important, but so are your feelings. And so facts can inform us of a situation, but so can your feelings. And sometimes you need both. And I think it's oftentimes that inner spirit, that Holy Spirit, that divine inspiration, it's telling you something, but we're not always listening. We're definitely not always listening. And I think that the reason why, sometimes we're overlooking it, sometimes we're second guessing it. Anyone have a gut feeling and then you over logic it and second guess it? You're like, no, you have a gut feeling about somebody and you're like, no, I must just be making up things. No, that just must be, it's just all in my head. And you start to think that it's all in your head, but your gut is like, nope, I know. And there's this rich inner wisdom here that we're not tapping into often, especially today. And one of the reasons I think this happens is, probably lots of reasons, but I think the majority of us, we're heavily distracted. We're heavily distracted and not practicing using this inner wisdom. And so we get distracted with life and how busy it can be and all the things that we have to do and produce and make. And it's interesting because it leaves us feeling disconnected to the point where we no longer know how to hear or trust that inner spirit. And I've been on both sides of the coin, so tapped in, I'm like so sure of myself that yes, this is guiding me and I know it. And then I've been on the other side of the coin, so distracted, I almost don't know what end is up. And I'm sitting here thinking, I don't know, now I'm second guessing myself and can I trust this voice? And in the chaos of the digital age, I think it's getting harder and harder, if you will, to stay emotionally present and spiritually awake. I think we, as people, do the best we can, but it can be really difficult to stay emotionally present and spiritually awake. We're facing what researchers are calling continuous partial attention. Some of you might be in this space right now. You're kind of like drip, thinking about your grocery list. You might be secretly tweeting, like, oh my God, hashtag so bored. You might be like doing all this other, because our energy is being split in so many different ways. There's so many things vying for our attention. So the researchers are calling this continual partial attention. We're never fully devoting our attention to something. We're sort of like half here, half there, to-do list, gotta do this, I'm on my computer. We're never fully in it. And when we're never fully in it, it's no wonder that we're missing these still, small, silent voices within. And so oddly enough, we're engaging in what these researchers are calling disconnecting behavior. We're doing that actually because we're longing for connection. And so we're deeply longing to stay connected, and yet we're doing things that are creating disconnecting behavior, which is ironic, isn't it? It's the opposite of what we crave. And so I mentioned this briefly at the beginning of the series, that each year our attention span gets shorter and shorter and shorter. In fact, at the current point in history, we humans have a shorter attention span than goldfish. And it's true that right now the average human attention span is 8 seconds, and a goldfish has 9. I mean, I instantly picture, which I wish I had a picture for this, I instantly picture roles reversed and like us in a fish tank, and we're just like, you know what I'm saying? And the fish is on the outside like, what are you doing, human? And the roles have been really, really reversed here. And it's no wonder, right? Because the average American spends 5 hours a day, the average American, okay? And I'm going to guess that's most of us. The average American spends more than 5 hours a day on mobile devices. Anyone have the new iPhone update and it tells you your screen time usage? Has anyone ever seen that 5-hour mark yet? No. Anyone seen a couple hours? 2, 3, 4, 12? Nobody would admit that anyway, let's be honest. If you are, you're like, that's not me. 5 hours a day. Now, I didn't dig much deeper, but the thing that I was curious about is if this is based on a 7-day week, this is 35 hours a week. That's a job, y'all. Like, you could make some money. Have someone pay you to look at your phone. You know, this is a lot of money, or a lot of time. Time is money. It's a lot of time. And so when I hear people say, I don't have time to quiet my mind, I go, if this is what you're doing with your life, you probably have a lot more time than you realize. It's these quiet times, these quiet spaces that we fill up really, really easy. Really easy. And so no wonder it can be harder and harder to hear that divine inner guidance, because I think at one point, these still small moments, they would have been organic, and it would have been just this natural moment where we would organically hear from Spirit, and now we fill it with conversation. Now we fill it with TV. We fill it with our devices. And I'm not saying those things are bad. Not at all. Trust me, I do all those things. But you quickly observe that you fill these sweet moments with stuff. And I think that for me, I laugh because I thought that's probably why one of the times I get the most and greatest revelations is in the shower, because that's the one place you cannot take your cell phone. Right? Unless anyone here, does anyone take your phone in the shower? It got real awkward just now. So either because that was talking about being in the shower, or some of you do. It's the one time you're genuinely quiet without that thing around. American author and businessman Dov Seidman says these words: when you press the pause button on a computer, it stops. When you press the pause button on a human being, it starts. It starts to reflect, to rethink, and to reimagine. That's good. When you press pause on a human being, some beautiful things happen. How many of you would kind of classify yourself maybe as a creative of type? Some sort of. Doesn't have to even be in the literal arts. You have a creative mind. Creativity thrives and lives off of pause. You have to steal away these moments in order to create. And if you're not someone that's creative, you still have to steal these moments away so something can be created within you. So I believe one of the ways we can do this and be emotionally present and spiritually awake is to practice silence and solitude, which, let me pause, will look very different for each one of us. But it's an ancient practice rich with wisdom. So in the book of Matthew, chapter 3, we read a story of Jesus who's being baptized by John. And the first thing that's interesting, if you've read the story, the first thing Jesus does after this hallmark, landmark moment in his life before his ministry is he then goes and is led by the Spirit into the wilderness. So before anything, he has this incredible encounter and he says, pause, I'm going to go away. I hear the Spirit calling and I shall go. And he goes into the wilderness. Now, the Greek word for wilderness is eremos, which is an ancient Greek adjective, something we should note. This isn't a noun or a place, it's an adjective. The wilderness, eremos, is an adjective which means a solitary, lonely, and desolate place. This eremos place, it's not just a one-time event for Jesus, nor in biblical literature. We're not just talking about one time. We see it again and again and again. If you've grown up in any type of Christian-based tradition, you'll see that this is a pattern. And we see this in observing Jesus, that this is actually a rhythm of his life. This eremos moment is a rhythm of his life. In Mark's gospel in chapter 1:35, we read of another eremos or wilderness moment, if you will, for Jesus. It says, for very early in the morning, while it was still dark, Jesus got up, left the house, and went off to a solitary place where he prayed. Now, prayer for him at that time, who knows what that looked like, but the ancient Jewish prayer was most likely a lot of listening. And you see this often, probably a lot of listening. And if he practiced the Shema, maybe, it was this listening and doing. But you see that he got himself away from people, away from the hustle, the busyness, the people calling for his energy and his time, and he had a moment of solitary aloneness to be with God. And you see this pattern and again of this solitary place. Jesus' rhythm of rest and engagement, and rest and engagement and rest and engagement is something that we see patterned again and again. And the poet Ovid that I read at the very, very beginning, I think he was onto something. And if he was an ancient Roman poet, chances are he probably knew all about this life, this way of life, that a rested field produces bountiful crops. You need this rest and engagement. How many of you ever heard of the desert fathers and mothers? Got a few of you. If you feel like doing some interesting research, if you're that kind of person, I would encourage you to research them, read some books. It's fascinating. But the desert fathers and mothers were basically these early Christian mystics and sages of their day. And they would go into these places of solitude to live basically like a monastic style of life. They would steal away into the desert to be with the divine. And I think there's this ancient wisdom that these desert fathers and mothers, the ancestors, that they were modeling, that this ancient wisdom that our ancestors, that the wisdom sages, that the mystics, and that the saints, I think there's something that they all know really, really, really well, and have been trying to pass off in hand to us for centuries, for quite some time. So in the solitude and silence, we're learning to stop and listen. And to stop all the doing, the producing, the worrying, the stressing, the people-pleasing, and simply just be. Do nothing, make nothing, just listen and be. Now, when you hear that, does that give you anxiety? Yes. Yes. To do nothing. No agenda. You can't produce anything. You can't be important. You can't have a title. You can't have a certain project. Nope. How many of you that feels refreshing and you just can't wait to do that? Right? So we've got a lot of different types of probably needs in this room. Where some people, that probably gives you a clue too. If you pay attention, this is actually also a bunny trail, but it still ties in. If you're paying attention to your reaction to that question, that's another form of deep listening. Why does the silence make you uncomfortable? Because you have to listen to yourself. Yeah. Why else? That is a really good one, Tracy. We've been taught not to waste time. Don't know what to say. Oh, ding, 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 ding. Want to avoid pain. Yes. If you've studied the Enneagram, any of you Enneagram 9s, you might want to avoid some pain. We all do it though, right? We all do it. We want to check out, numb out sometimes because we don't want to feel that pain. Okay, so you can see that for some of us, that's uncomfortable. Now, for some of you, you're like, oh, please, I can't wait to just be alone in this solitary place. And what is it about that you hear that you go, yes, I want to be in that space? What invites you in? Nature. Me too. Yeah. That's why actually the summer here can be one of the most depressive times for me. Because I don't get to be in nature as much. Yeah. Anybody else? Oh, good one, Lisa. You don't have to please anyone but yourself. It's true. You have no expectations. It's you showing up as you, and that's it. Yep. Oh, that is good. Can we all just sit in that for a moment? I've been waiting for you, and you were my friend. The things that you hear in this moment of silence are rich. Are rich. That is wisdom, and I feel like that needs to sink in. I feel like there's probably a lot of us that need to hear that wisdom. I've been waiting for you, and you're my friend. That is good. So when we're talking about this and we feel a little bit of or discomfort in this, I'm not asking you to live a monastic lifestyle and become a monk, right? Because some of you would love that chance. Ibra, I'm looking at you. You would love that. And some of us wouldn't. And it depends on who we are, whether we're introverted, extroverted, whether we're engaging maybe more in our mind or our heart. It all depends. So I'm not asking that, but I do think there are ways that we can make more time for listening to what our life is saying to us. I do think there's ways. For myself, I cannot stress enough for me a practice of a morning routine. Now, some of you aren't morning people. Some of you are. But how we spend those first waking hours often sets the tone for our day. And we forget that. And I know, again, if you're paying attention to your life and paying attention even just to your body, there's a difference between alarm goes off, wake up, scroll on your Facebook, hurry, get on your clothes, drink your cup of coffee, get out of there. That energy, do you feel it? And then I'm going to wake up. I'm going to be mindful about waking up. I'm going to cook myself some breakfast, have a cup of coffee, a cup of tea, whatever your thing is. You have this routine. Hello, world. Good to be here. There's a different flow, right? There's a different flow. So for me, because I can and my schedule allows, my morning ritual is the thing that defines me, if you will. And I've heard it said like this. If I can find the quote. Whatever. We'll get to it. That how we spend the first hours of our day is something, right here, it's on the thing. Y'all are like, Angie, find something in the morning that makes you feel most like yourself so that you won't spend the rest of your day searching for you. Okay, so what we're talking about in this morning ritual doesn't have to be this. So some of you have this practice of, I read my Bible, I pray, I this or that. Some of you are like, I haven't read the Bible in a long time. I'm still not sure where I sit with that. Okay, what's the next thing that makes you feel like you? That makes you feel like you. That makes you step into this day of, here's a sense of autonomy so I don't have to start looking for me in all of these things, right? So that, for me, centers me in the morning. And I don't know if that's just because of who I am or because I saw it modeled. Every single morning, my mom was that mom that would get up, have her cup of tea. She'd be sitting on the couch reading her Bible and just spending time in quiet. And I saw it modeled. And so for me and my sister, we're both that way. We get up. It's this quiet time. It's time to be with ourselves, to be with Spirit, to hear, to listen. Now, I know the rest of you that aren't morning people have tuned me out. You're like, no chance in Hades is that going to happen. Nope. And for some of you, I do realize you have kids, and that changes your whole morning routine. It's harder to have these quiet moments when you're like, yeah, I hear you, Angie, but I got to get so-and-so ready for school and feed them and do this and take them off here and do this and do that. That's challenging, right? So instead, what I'd like to do is more or less challenge you to say, what does it look like for you? Can you carve out 15 minutes before bed? A lunch break. I used to do this at one of my old jobs. I was living such a chaotic, busy life. The only time I had available was my lunch break. And I would go sit on the back porch by myself at this business I worked at, and I would just take a few moments to myself. So whatever those moments are, identify them and carve them out. So for some people, it might look like coffee, tea, yoga, meditation, quietness, being in nature, taking a hike, going on a bike ride, taking a walk, taking a nap, laying in a hammock, like all these different things that might look different for you. But when you create these moments of no agenda, that's when, ironically, you start to hear clearer. You start to hear that inner guidance, that spirit within that says, hey, I've got something to tell you. One of the things I've also incorporated into my own life, and again, these are just what's working for me. You will find what works for you based on the type of person you are. I can't stress enough journaling. And it's helped me in my own awareness and my own spiritual practice so much. Now, I think that journaling gets this really bad rap because people automatically associate it with sort of like junior high diaries. Is anybody with me on this one? And you get this really bad idea of that. It's like, dear diary, today I did this. Dear diary, today I saw so-and-so, and that's not what I'm talking about. But just for your pure entertainment, I actually wanted to share a couple bad diary entries that I found online that were hilarious. You won't be able to read it, so let me read it to you because it's hard to see. This one says, Dear diary, Alex Smith is in love with me. Side note, this is someone that was 9 years old, okay? Alex Smith is in love with me, so is Brian. I love Brian, not Alex. Alex picks his nose, and he eats his boogers, and it's annoying. I hate it when he gives me a love look at 9. At 9, what does a love look like at 9? My position reminds me of Hermione's position in Shakespeare's drama, A Midsummer's Night Dream. Too many boys. And she put two, T-W-O. Too many boys. Okay, there's this one. This one's great. I think there is a monster under my bed. Okay, this is a 7-year-old, okay? Someone found their diary from when they were 7. I think there is a monster under my bed. I am brave, so I will check it out. Update. Hold your fire. As for now, there is no monster under the bed, just a popsicle stick and a dead bug. Heart, Abby. Oh, it's so good. They're all so good. This one, don't show it yet. Well, they'll be able to read it, so it doesn't matter. Oh, thanks, Lindsay. You got it. This one is from an 8-year-old, okay? So I want you to know this was found by a mother This was a mom that found her 8-year-old daughter's diary. And she says, my 8-year-old daughter kept the diary for 3 days, gave it up, and left it on the living room floor. This was the very last entry. The last entry says, I do not have my puberty yet. What? Oh, how many of you have 8-year-olds? Or close? Oh, yeah, yes. I hope you don't find that one in their diary. Actually, yes, please find that one. It's better than the other entry. It could say a lot worse. So while these are hilarious, and they are, I think that sometimes people have that sort of framework when they think of journaling. Dear diary, I did this today. Dear diary, I did that. For everybody uses journaling a little different. And for me, journaling looks more like practicing noticing and then noting. So for me, that's what it looks like. I have a conversation with a friend and I get uncomfortable. And if it's enough to make me aware of maybe my own reaction, I'll note it and go, I had a conversation with someone and it rubbed me the wrong way, and it's probably not them, it's probably me. And maybe this is what I'm wrestling with. Or I had this thought, and this is something that might be coming into my rear view or into my world. And so it might look like a feeling, it might look like a moment that happened, it might look like a thought, a quote. And then sometimes what I do is some of my quiet moments, I'll take out my journal, and then I give myself time to read through it. If you want clarity and you want your life to speak, what Parker Palmer is saying is true. Your own words will speak to you. You will take a step back and go, oh, I've been talking about this thing for 6 months. This thing is really bothering me. Oh, I've been wanting to quit this job since last May. I should quit this job. Oh, this relationship that's really toxic that I've been wrestling with for, let's say, the last 9 months. Yeah, I've been talking about it. And you find that your own words become the living word. Your own words take on flesh and they speak to you, and you go, there's some truth here. There's some truth here. And so it's this noticing, this deep practice of noticing. So what I'd like to wrap up with is that there's no routine that's a universal fit for this listening. There's no routine that's universal. You're all going to have a different practice. Most of you probably already have a practice, and maybe this is a gentle reminder to keep up with it. Maybe this is a gentle reminder of, oh yeah, I haven't done that thing. And so, as I said, some of you might have kids. Some of you might have really, really hectic schedules, and I empathize so much. And it can be hard to take that quick moment alone, and that's okay. Start with where you're at. And we all have different ways of accessing our inner selves and the divine. And so I want to say, decide what's valuable for you and decide what's important to you. Before we pivot, I would like to ask one final question, because I think there's always a wealth of insight in this room. I want to ask, what are some ways that you are able to hear the inner guidance within? And you can feel free to get as deep and philosophical or just as quick one-word answer. What are some ways you were able to hear the inner guidance within? And you can call that the Holy Spirit. You can call it divine inspiration, the gut feeling.
My journal. Yeah, it's my journal.
Jen.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And I'll throw this caveat out. You could also be vulnerable about maybe if you don't hear it. It's fine, I got time. Listening to music. Ooh, any other people that would say, yes, music really speaks to me? Yes, on a deep level, Matt. That's why we appreciate you so much. Well, there's lots of reasons why we appreciate you. Thank you for that. I appreciate that, Thomas. And don't encourage him by getting a pet chicken. My sister had pet chickens. They're pretty great. I know, I shouldn't. I'm fanning the flame. I'm fanning the flame. But he's still on to something of sometimes we want to do something and we can't. So for you, it's driving and praying out loud. There's power in hearing your own self, too. I say that writing is helpful, but there really is power in hearing your own self. And when you're talking to God, there's something about hearing your own words back. Oh, so people that know you really well, that you can't hide from, become a mirror. So in a way, we could say the inner guidance is speaking through them to us. Yes. Yes. I hate those moments when Talia is that for me. And then she reminds me that in our vows, I said that to her, that you're my mirror. And she'll tell me, I'm your mirror. I'm like, I don't want you to be my mirror. Please don't. Just tell me nice things. Yes, that's a really good point, that we can be used in that way so many times. So many times. Anybody else? Yes. 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 I completely agree. Peter, I should just have you speak. Do you mind if I put you on blast for a minute? Are you sure? Yeah. Okay. This is our friend Peter. This is his first time here. And we met briefly through social media. We have some similar friends, some mutual friends. I love when a person has never been into this space ever and feels so comfortable to share your heart and your thoughts. And that's some deep wisdom that probably a lot of us need to hear.
And about the mirror thing, I have a...
So you, my friend, are listening to your inner guidance.
Yeah, you have to be brave if you want to do that, though.
Yes, you do. Thank you for being brave. I appreciate that. Thank you. Phew. How many of you felt that moment of bravery when you left your, let's say, evangelical church or wherever you were at, and then you showed up here for the first time?
I was quite scared our first time.
Yes, but something told you to come, right? Something in you is like, no, I want to be a part of this. I don't even know what I think about all this, but I want to be a part of it. Yeah, I feel you. Matt, would you like to come up at this time? I said, would you, as if that's a choice. We believe in consent around here. You can leave if you want. I told you things were a little weird tonight, and I kind of like it. I want to leave you with a quote, and then Matt's going to carry us on into a space of intentional listening. Since we've been focusing a lot on some of Parker Palmer's words, I wanted to leave you with a quote that really talks about what it's like to get our soul in these quiet spaces. He says these words: "The soul speaks its truth only under quiet, inviting, and trustworthy conditions. The soul is like a wild animal, tough, resilient, savvy, self-sufficient, and yet exceedingly shy. If we want to see a wild animal, the last thing we should do is go crashing through the woods, shouting for the creature to come out. But if we're willing to walk quietly into the woods and sit silently for an hour or two at the base of a tree, the creature we are waiting for may well emerge. And out of the corner of an eye, we will catch a glimpse of the precious wildness we seek."
We're not going to sit here for another hour or two, but we want to take some time just to kind of carve out some space. So I want to invite you to close your eyes. Feel your feet flat on the floor. Feel your bottom and your back against the seat. Notice your breath. As you take a long inhale, as you exhale, feel your body sink into your seat. I want you to imagine yourself in a place of peace. Wherever that place is for you, whether it's a place that you've been or a place that you imagine, whether it's on a beach or on a mountain, in the woods, in a kitchen, on a porch. What do you see around you? What do you hear? What do you feel? What is the temperature? Can you feel the sun? You feel a breeze? What do you smell? As you imagine yourself there, you notice that there is another person with you. You realize that it is yourself, another version of yourself. Your inner teacher. The part of you where your wisdom and your intuition resides. Part of you spiritually connected. As you acknowledge this version of yourself, you kind of open yourself up, turn your attention to them. What do they have to say to you? What does this version of yourself have to say about how you regard yourself? What does this version have to say about your future? What does this version of yourself have to say about what you are feeling? There are emotions that you've been avoiding. What do these emotions have to teach you? Is there anything else that this version of yourself has to say? Is there anything that you have to say to this other version of yourself? Anything that you want to express? Is there any physical contact that you need to make? Is there an impulse to touch, to embrace, to hold? Before this encounter comes to an end, spend some time with just a couple moments to express your gratitude to yourself. Take some time to express your love for yourself. As you begin to come back to this present moment in this room, know that it certainly isn't a goodbye. That this part of yourself is accessible at any time. So maybe you curl your toes in your shoes or wiggle your fingers just to kind of feel your body in this room. If you feel like gently opening your eyes, taking a breath. want to sing one more song with you guys. This is when I listen to myself, the message that I often receive is peace. Is that I'm going to be okay. That no matter what happens, I have everything I need within me, and I can rest in that. The grandeur is quaked before, moved by the sound of your voice. Seas that are shaken and stirred can be calmed and broken from my regard. Do it all, my eyes are on you. Do it all, it is well. Do it all, my eyes are on you. It is well with me. Far be it from me to not believe, even when my eyes can't see. And this mountain that's in front of me will be thrown into the midst of the sea. Through it all, my eyes are on you. Through it all, it is well. Through it all, my eyes are on you, and it is well. It is well. So let go of my soul and trust in you. The waves and winds still know your name. Oh, so let go of my soul and trust in you. The waves and winds still know your name. Oh, let go of my soul and trust in you. The waves and winds still know your name. Let go of my soul and trust in you. The waves and winds still know your name. The waves and winds still know your name. It is well with my soul. It is well with my soul. It is well with my soul. Do it all, do it all. My eyes are. Do it all, do it all. It is well. Do it all, do it all. My eyes are on you. It is well with me.
Let's take a moment together in prayer. Oh, Spirit, thank you for guiding us this evening. My gut, my intuition, my spirit says yes. You are here with us, among us, in us, through us. Thank you for letting us feel, experience, and know just a glimpse of who you are. May we continue to have those moments where we're reminded again of this sweetness we encounter in life that we're forever trying to chase and forever trying to name. And let us sit in these sweet moments and let this evening be a reminder of these moments that are accessible to us at any time, any place. And I want to leave you with a prayer by Macrina Whitaker, who says, God, why do I storm the heavens for answers that are already in my heart? Every grace I need has already been given me. Oh, lead me to the beyond within. Let it be so. Lead me to the beyond within. Divine love, be our guide. Be with us this week. We ask these things together as a community. In your name, amen. All right, y'all. Go in peace. If you're the type of person that likes to know what's going on throughout the month, we have a weekly newsletter, email. If you don't get that, please sign up for that at the info booth. It's a great way to stay in touch. Next week, Steve is speaking. Woo-hoo! If you haven't heard Steve speak yet, you will be delighted. Here he is. He's speaking next week. The week after is the day, technically the day before Easter. And since we meet the day before Easter, we're going to do things a little stranger this year. And we're going to observe what's called Holy Saturday. And most people go from Good Friday straight to Resurrection on Sunday. We're going to do the in-between, the liminal space, and have a really fun time with it. If you've gotten the email, you've already known this, but come prepared maybe to do some seeking, some searching, and come prepared to let something go. And by letting something go, I mean maybe something in here you've been carrying around. With that also, we will have a potluck right after the service. So that's the 20th, April 20th. We'll have our Easter/Holy Saturday service, a little bit of a ceremony, and then a potluck. If you want to sign up for the potluck, we're doing that online, but I'm sure we can start a sign-up sheet here as well. That would probably be better. Go in peace, y'all. I love you. Take care.